So I heard someone say this the other day, but it seems like more and more people today become addicted to their own pain. Both men and women, I think, are more so becoming addicted to their own pain and suffering, and it's it's just a bit more normal. And I think that's why there's so many more people saying that they have these problems like depression and anxiety and all that stuff is also because not just are there, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be depressed and anxious because the world today is crazy and there's a lot of bad stuff going on. But for the most part, life is pretty alright. And there's this new like movement of people recently where everybody wants to, not everybody, a lot of people want to say they have depression, they have anxiety, they have all these things. And now, while like I said, these rates of all these things are rising. I mean, for example, I don't know if I can pull this up. I think I can add the display capture. 1 second. Hold on, guys. 1 second. But there's this, and this came out maybe like a couple weeks ago from the CDC that um, lots of young women are feeling this sense of hopelessness. I'm not sure why it wasn't about young men too, or why they didn't do a study on young men. But it says right here, and I think you guys should be able to see this. Yeah, that the CDC said 57% of teen girls feel persistently sad or hopeless, which is a huge number. And 30% of those have considered dying by suicide, which is very, very strange. But again, with women, I think there's a lot more reasons. Like, women are more self conscious, they want to fit in, and now all of a sudden you have social media everywhere, and now you have TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube Reels, and when they're on Instagram, they're seeing all these girls and comparing themselves to all these other girls, and it's awful for women to do that. It's often awful for women, for the majority of women to see like the top 1% of women who are just very fit, naturally very fit, very skinny, very beautiful. It's awful for them, and I think it only does bad things. I think it's bad for everyone actually, not just women. And I think that's one of the real causes of this. But also, I think it's also become more popular to be depressed or say you have depression or say anxiety. The amount of people I've met, mainly women, who say they have anxiety when they really don't. And it's very obvious they don't. They say it because they want attention. And like, I knew this one girl who said she had anxiety and depression. And what she would do is she would like pretend to have tics. Like, oh, it's my anxiety tics. And it's, while I think there is a big like cloud of depression affecting both men and women, young people especially. I think a lot of it is fake, and I think a lot of it is just about trying to have a bit more depression than the other person to get a bit more attention, because that's what everything about is about nowadays. All the social media, which people are on 24/7, is about getting more attention. And so, if you are not, for a woman, if you're not the most beautiful, if you don't look like the top 1% or 5% of women, then, well, you're not going to get attention online, at least not as much. So, I'll just say I have depression. And of course, women are more prone to uh, just being in a bad mood, basically, and having, I forget what Jordan Peterson said, women are more prone to negative thoughts, um, which isn't something against them, it makes sense. But I also think that this is affecting young men too, to where now you have this whole movement of young men. I don't know if you guys have seen these videos, but there's this whole movement of young men who, like, this very niche movement, who want to go against everyone, against the entire world, and think that the whole world is out to get them, basically. And they are trying to, like, live off their own pain and suffering, which is actually just all created in their head. I just think it's very, very strange. It's interesting too. Like, depression in teenagers is more common than one might think, and it's hitting teenage girls especially hard. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention released a study showing that nearly 3 in 5 teen girls, or 57%, feel persistently sad or hopeless, the highest rate in a decade. And I'm sure that's probably the highest rate ever, actually. It's a perfect storm that's coming together for young women, a clinical psychologist said. So strange. And 30% of these teen girls have seriously considered dying by suicide, a percentage that's significantly higher than 10 years ago. Hi, Jane. So even though this was a couple weeks ago, when was it? I don't know if there's a date on here. February 20th. Yeah. I still think that a lot of people try to fake it. Or they believe that just because they're sad, or they're not happy all the time, that they have depression, and then they should go on some antidepressants that make them act like a zombie all day. I mean, I know someone who used to be a very happy, bubbly person, who was always joking around, laughing, funny, had lots of energy. And now this person has a hard time doing anything. She has no energy. She barely laughs. It's like she's just a shell of a person she once was. But then, of course, and if you're a young boy and you move around a little bit too much in class or talk a little bit too much in class, they're like, oh, you have ADHD. Put you on some Ritalin. It's so wrong. And I've noticed that this, especially for young women, they think that just because they feel off, which could be for a number of reasons, perhaps birth control could make them feel off in a lot of cases, especially since it's so popular nowadays. I mean, it throws off your hormones, so of course it's going to make you feel off. But also, people believe that if they're not constantly filled with dopamine and happy, then they must have depression. And so all these girls, like, I've noticed a lot of young women vehemently defend antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication, which is ridiculous. And then they turn into these zombies. So they're on like 4 or 5 medications, or three to 5, let's say. Because they find out they have this other thing, and it's just, I mean, that's a good way to make a lot of money, is by tricking people into thinking that they have countless problems that they don't. And then people have more problems because they're like, well, now I'm stuck on this medication, and if I get off, I'm going to feel terrible. I know I will. Because, well, I had depression before, now I don't. So now I'm dependent on this thing, and now I feel bad because I'm dependent on this thing. And who knows when I'll get off? Who knows? Maybe never. Okay, so it says depression is hitting teen boys too. Overall, more than 40% of teens said they felt so sad or hopeless within the past year that they were unable to do their regular activities, such as schoolwork or sports, for at least 2 weeks. Okay. Wow. 12% of teens had misused prescription opioids, a number that is down slightly from the previous years. The good news for people. Yeah, but it's all people feed off their own pain and live off of it. They become addicted to it absolutely. Because when you're not constantly having dopamine shoved in your face with TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube video games, football, baseball, soccer, hockey, all this useless stuff, then you feel, life isn't that good. But that's because you're inside. And once you go outside and do stuff, it's actually okay. It's much better than okay. But yeah, it's not surprising. But people will definitely feed off their pain. And this small group of young boys that I was talking about that I mentioned, they they believe that the whole world is against them, and that they're painting this weird picture where they're the like hated hero that has to go against the whole world. But I think it was Seneca who said something like, "We suffer more in imagination than we do in reality," which is very true. And now that it's become popular to be depressed and anxious, it's it's good. It's fun, you know. Go talk to your teachers about it, and then CPS will take you away from your parents because they probably did something wrong. Never talk to your teachers about anything like that. If you say, "I'm a little sad," they'll go, "Whoa, go to the counselor right now. We need to call your parents." It's ridiculous. I think it was also Morgan Freeman that said, when he was interviewed by Don Lemon, like 12 years ago, 13 years ago, or something. Don Lemon was like, "Well, how do you get rid of racism?" And Morgan Freeman said, "Stop talking about it." I think it's the same thing. How do you get rid of a lot of depression and anxiety? Stop talking about it. Stop talking about how many people are suffering from this terrible thing, which it is terrible if you actually have it. But most people don't have it, and it's like that fear, that placebo effect that people get. And it's bad. But anyway, just something I thought was interesting to me, especially because I find I have conversations with people about things like antidepressants and just shoving your face with more and more medications to keep you alive when there was a whole generation in that saw cities get nuked and people evaporated and tons of people not coming back home. Your father's not coming back home. Your brother's not coming back home. Your husband's not coming back home from World War II or World War One. But they weren't obsessed with how depressed they were. They weren't obsessed with how anxious they were. And that was one of the most depressing times. That was one of the times where you could understand someone being anxious. I'm anxious because I don't know if my dad's coming home. I'm anxious because I don't know if my brother's coming home. I'm anxious because I don't know if my husband's coming home. I'm depressed because my dad could be dead right now. I'm depressed because my brother could be dead right now. That makes sense. That makes sense. I don't know when I'm going to see him again. But now, you can talk to anyone whenever you want. You can go anywhere, basically whenever you want. But because it's fun. Yeah, have some more depression, some anxiety. You probably have it. You should go to the doctor. Check that out. You probably have depression, anxiety, ADHD too, probably. Man, you have lots of problems. It's ridiculous. It's not like you don't spend 90% of your day inside, away from the sun and away from other people, talking to yourself about how you have depression and watching videos about how depressed you are and only getting dopamine hits from the videos you watch. But yeah, do not feed off of your own pain. Don't get addicted to it. You can use your own pain to do better, but don't ever drown in your sorrows. Worst thing to do. But people love it, and you don't want to be those people. Great men are not those people. Never are. But anyway, guys, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you on Wednesday.